You know the film is a mark of quality when it begins and ends with a poop joke. Yeah, this movie introduces us to the world of Tom and Jerry through three rapping pigeons who are rapping a song that feels like it belongs in the 90s, constantly asking us if we can kick it. Meanwhile, one of the pigeons poops while they're flying, and it flies into the face of the pigeon behind them. And the movie ends with Spike pooping at the wedding, and everyone turning around, smelling it, and going, Spike! Yeah. Totally great film. Yeah, they made a new Tom and Jerry movie, but it's not all animated. It's live action, with the characters of Tom and Jerry being animated. So a mixture of live action and animation. Yeah, that's been done great before. Too bad this isn't one of those great movies. You know what? This Tom and Jerry kind of falls in line with some of the other animated movies in recent years, where Tom and Jerry just ends up in a classic movie like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Wizard of Oz, where it's basically just animated versions of those movies, and then every so often just having Tom and Jerry in it as secondary characters. Yeah. This is this movie, except the plot of this movie is about a girl played by Chloe Grace Moretz. Sorry, I'm ranting, so I'm probably going to mispronounce names. But it's about her conning her way into a job at the hotel by seeing someone who's applied for it, pretending to be the interviewer, saying that, hey, you're not right for this job, you shouldn't apply, then stealing that girl's resume, using it for her own, and say, hey, I can work at this hotel, I got a great resume. Yeah, okay, you're hired. And then her trying to prove herself before they realize that she is a complete sham. And meanwhile, there's a wedding going on, a very prestigious wedding that's going to give the hotel a lot of publicity because the wedding is two famous rich people who have enough money to spend on elephants and tigers and peacocks and drones and remote-controlled skateboards with Wi-Fi, because why the fi not? That's a joke in this movie. Yes, a wedding for two rich people that we don't care anything about. And yeah, the movie is about making sure that wedding goes without a hitch. And then every so often, Tom and Jerry have their little antics and kind of ruin the wedding, and then save the day. And that's the end of this travesty, this trash. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Usually I talk about the good before I talk about the bad in a movie, and usually even some of the worst movies out there, I can find at least something good. And with Tom and Jerry, there is a few good things I can say about the film. For one, the animation is decent. Also, I do appreciate the commitment this film had by making every single animal animated. This isn't one of those movies where some animals are animated or CGI, while there's also real animals in the film. That would be too awkward. So no, every single animal in the film is animated. And I also got to think, hey, if every animal is in this film animated, then wouldn't meat products be animated too? The movie only shows a tidbit of what looked like meat, and that was animated too. Plus, the fish corpses that they come across and in the fish market, they're all cartoon too. So, yeah, they thought ahead about that But this is a hollow compliment because this was also a very bad idea. Look, I can appreciate their commitment, but I think it was a wrong choice for the movie. The animation in this film really contrasts with the live action of the film, so I really feel this movie would have been better if it was all animation. I mean, hell, the actors and the characters of this movie, they basically act like animated characters. Why not be animated characters? Then there might be a little bit there that could be forgiven. And also with all the animals being cartoons, it does kind of make the film morbid because, hey, all these animals are pretty animated to the point where they're pretty sentient. And the movie does show that we do eat animals. It shows all these fish corpses in the fish market. Were those sentient too? I mean, there's a sentient goldfish in the movie. Yeah, these are the kind of things that you could possibly think about when you're bored out of your mind, because when you're bored with a movie, you start to see more plot holes than you probably would if you were actually enjoying the film. Honestly, I was expecting a soulless, cash grab, generic film, and for the most part, that is what it is. But I didn't expect it to be as painful to watch as it actually is, which makes it worse than a generic cash grab, soulless studio movie, which this pretty much is. The comedy of this film, the dialogue of this film, absolutely horrible. Alright, now I can understand people maybe laughing at this movie, maybe enjoying the comedy, because everyone has their own opinion on comedy. It's very, very subjective. But think of it this way. Have you ever seen a comedy where you didn't laugh a single bit? One that you were bored out of your mind? Listen, to me, one of the worst things to sit through, one of the most painful things to sit through, is a comedy that isn't funny. Imagine that. That's what Tom and Jerry was for me, because I didn't laugh a single bit throughout this movie. In fact, I went to the theaters for this. I don't have HBO, so went to the theaters with this. Went with my dad because my dad wanted to see it. He told me afterwards that it felt like 3 hours long, and I told him, yeah, I agree. This was way too long. It wasn't 3 hours, but it definitely felt like it because it felt cringy. I was cringing pretty much the entire time. And we were in a theater that was about as much capacity as it can hold because it's the pandemic and it can only hold about 50% in screens, and there's empty seats between groups. So I think we were at the most capacity that theater could hold. So there was probably about 50 or so people with their families and a bunch of kids. I heard one laugh in the theater. A single laugh in the theater by a kid. And do you want to know what was so funny in this movie that got the only laugh in this entire screening? I'll tell you, because it's not worth it. This kid must have been absolutely desperate for laughter and laughed at something. And here's what it was. It was a line from Michael Pena's character. He says something, I can't remember what, something that he liked, because the character says something, some sort of idea, some sort of plan, some sort of inspiration, and then he stops, pauses, and thinks, huh, That's a good idea. I need to write that down," and then walks away. The kid went hysterical, started laughing, and yelled out, "Ha ha! He has to write it down to remember." That was the only laugh in this theater. The only laugh in this screening. Imagine that! Almost every comedic moment in this film, other than the slapstick from Tom and Jerry, is awkward, cringe-worthy, ad-lib comedy, to the point where I was shrinking in my seat with embarrassment. That's how painful it was. There was times when I just didn't want to look at the screen and wanted to cover my ears because of the dialogue being that embarrassing and awkward. Again, there is nothing more painful than watching a bad comedy. Another thing that doesn't work in this movie, the soundtrack. It is absolutely distracting. It's out of place. Every time there was a song put into the movie, it was either a really horrible song that I just did not like, or, well, or because it's both, it also did not fit with whatever we were seeing on screen. This movie seemed to be obsessed with making Tom and Jerry hip, because almost all of the film's soundtrack is hip-hop rap. I think there's like one pop song, one rock song, mostly rap and pop, or rap and hip-hop, and mostly sounding like it fits more in the 90s than today's music. And it just never fit the scenes that it was portraying. And it just, again, felt embarrassing. It felt like someone trying to be cool for the young ones. A lot of the dialogue, a lot of the jokes is dad jokes, feeling like someone in their 60s trying to emulate the lingo of today's kids. It feels that embarrassing. And since I'm talking about the soundtrack, might as well talk about the pigeons, because oftentimes they're the reason that there's songs in the movie, because one of them is singing and looking at the camera constantly, breaking the fourth wall. And there's one atrocious scene with this pigeon that just made me want to pull my hair. If you saw Chris Stuckman's review of Tom and Jerry, you know the scene I'm talking about, because he uses that clip in his movie review. Hopefully I can find that clip. If not, go over to Chris Stuckman's Tom and Jerry movie review. Basically, there's a scene where the pigeon flies into the camera, looks directly at us, and gives a recap of what we already know. Basically, this whole movie is about this wedding that's going to happen and all these plans. And like, think about it. We've had like about an hour to 50 minutes to an hour talking about this wedding that's going to happen. And then the next scene, the pigeon flies in, looks directly at us, and goes, "Hey, y'all, today is the day of the big wedding." We know. We've been watching this movie about the wedding the whole time. We know, stupid pigeon. It's the most useless scene in the movie. Granted, a lot of scenes in this movie is useless and pointless. When the movie first started and it showed the director's name, I'm like, Tim Story. That name sounds really familiar, but I couldn't place it until after the movie. After the movie, I looked up his movies, and there's one movie he directed that I liked. The newest Shaft movie. It was dumb, but I enjoyed it. But I can't say the rest for his other films that I've seen. He also made the 2 ride-along movies. Yeah, those are bad. And the first two Fantastic Four movies, yep, bad too. This is our director for Tom and Jerry, and it went as well as you would think. Honestly, when I saw the trailer, I knew this film was going to be bad. It felt like Smurfs level, but at the same time, I was thinking, okay, maybe it'll just be generic. Maybe this will be a meh movie. Maybe this will be a movie deserving of 2 stars, because usually that's the kind of films I put in that category. Unfortunately, I didn't laugh a single bit. It was very painful to watch. I was cringing in my seat practically the entire time. And all the moments with Tom and Jerry where you think it's going to be saved because they're doing their normal spiel, their normal antics, even those are lame. Look, almost all the slapstick with the two of them, it's classic, it's nostalgic. However, almost all the gags they do, almost all the slapstick, has already been done better in their cartoons. And so it feels like you get the lame, overdone versions rather than anything nice, creative, or new. And so those didn't even help. So, yeah, I'm giving Tom and Jerry 1 star. And honestly, that feels quite generous. So, did you get dragged to Tom and Jerry 2? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my other movie reviews or my Let's Plays or whatever you want to check out with my channel. Now, I did promise that I was going to do Stuck Apart and Redemption Day. I'm still going to do those, but I figured I'd do Tom and Jerry and Crisis first, since they just came out this week, and I saw both of them over the weekend. So Crisis will be next. Then I'll probably do those 2 movies I mentioned, and then probably Judas and the Black Messiah and Land, which I just saw. So those are the kind of movies that'll be coming up within the week, hopefully, and more as well, because I've seen 12 movies, and this is only the 4th one out of those 12 that I've actually reviewed. So, yeah, I've got a lot to do. But anyway, I'm Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.